It's me, Jesse, here with a new tutorial. Today is like an HDR tutorial with a special twist because these are boots, if you couldn't tell. A company named Thursday Boots sent me some boots and asked if I would take a couple pictures, and I said, sure, why not? So here's one I took. They don't really have anything like this. They're from New York. So I'm going to take you through my process here and show you what I do. We're going to do an HDR photo. So here I have 3 photos. 1, 2, 3 at 3 different exposures. I have other HDR videos, and I'll link that up right now. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. You can watch the other one for more help on that. So first thing we do is I like to pick my kind of image that I want to kind of work with. There's always one that is the correct exposure, and I would say it's this one right now. So I kind of want to work with this one just to get my white balance and everything set up properly. So white balance, obviously, we're just rolling through to find the right. It was a sunset, so there's a little bit of warmer tones in there, and I kind of want those to come through. Then I'm checking my lens profile, and my lens was just the regular Nikon, right there, the 24-85. And so I'm just going to leave it off because I kind of like it without it. And then just going to fix my cropping a little bit, kind of make it a little more centered there. Good. Yeah, that's all right. I don't know what they're going to do with these, but they can put text and stuff on there if they want. I left some space. But we're going to really bring out some of the light in this one. So to get these, I use a program called Photomatix Pro. And you can merge right here in Lightroom, but personally, not a huge fan of the HDR in Lightroom. I'm going to show you how I do that. So I'm going to synchronize these to match the tone that I have on this one right now and the crop. So you just select your main one there and then hold Shift, click, and then they're all selected. And then just hit sync. This little screen will pop up and it'll have all these little check boxes. All the right ones are checked for me right now. My crop, got to make sure that's checked right because I did that, and then the white balance and stuff. I don't have any local adjustments with the brush or any spot removal, so I'll just leave that blank. Just hit synchronize, and if you go through, there they are. They're all synced together. Next stage is, now I got to export this to Photomatix Pro. Quickly, it was on a tripod. I usually just leave it for minimal. And I just leave these all blank, except for import back into Lightroom, because that saves some time. So just hit export. All right, it's coming into here now. If you haven't used this yet, I suggest trying it out. I know there's like Aurora HDR and other things. I've just used this a lot, and it's the easiest for me to use. So here's my kind of like regular setting I have for everything, but for this purpose, I will just reset. Go back to the default. All right, let's fit this a little bigger here. All right, so that's too much for me. The thing about HDR is that it gets horribly abused, and I don't like that. If you go on like most Instagram HDR pages, it's horrendous. I should go and manage them for a while just to show people what is possible, because there's actually a lot possible with HDR if it's not abused. Really all you're doing is taking 3 frames and taking the light, the dynamic range from those images so that you can have proper lighting on all when things that you wouldn't get because you're exposing for a foreground and a background, a sky and a foreground, light and dark, and this way I get it all. So I'm just rolling through. I'm not sure this is actually going to be the right. There's a few different settings in here which I explained in the other HDR video. Basically, I'm just trying to land something that I like. And I'm going to go with this exposure fusion this time. I find that it's a little more subtle. You can see really how it like messes up with everything. You're not doing your edit in this program. You're just getting the light flat so that you can bring it back in a Lightroom and do a more serious edit on it. So that's all I'm really trying to do right now. I'm not trying to jack it all up. Okay, I think that's something for me to work with. I'm just going to re-import that. Okay, so we're back in Lightroom now. I'll just show you here what it did. So it took these 3 images, 1, 2, 3, and it made this image. So it's kind of taken tones from each one, or sorry, I should say more of the dynamic range from each one and kind of fused it together so I can work with this now. Now it's time to edit. There's a lot of ways to approach this. Personally, I like to use this lights guy here to kind of bring some light. I usually dial back my exposure a tiny bit and then use the lights to kind of give it a little more poppy pop in there. And the contrast you could do too, but I don't want to lose the light in this. So rather than just throwing like contrast all over this whole thing, what I like to do is just use this adjustment brush. The adjustment brush is your friend. Because you can apply light to different areas. Basically all Lightroom is you're just painting light back into an image that you kind of want, to affect. Now here's this dreaded clarity slider button, and if you like go like that, you're like, oh, that looks amazing. It doesn't. You can see all this like haloing along the trees there. Watch when I take it away. Goes away. There, not there. There. That line you see is not desirable. So you can add a bit in, but you don't want to go crazy. All right, that's all right there. It's out of focus because I'm focused on these shoes, so I don't really need to sharpen anything, but I will drop a little bit of noise reduction just to smooth it out. And I'm going to throw a little more color up in the sky there, just by tweaking the color balance. And you can throw some saturation. We'll see. I don't like it. It's turning a little purpley. So leave that there for now. I'll come back to that in a little bit. I want to kind of paint on these shoes here now. Every time, like I see that's, you can hover over that and it'll turn red. That's what's being affected. There's this one, that's what's being affected. So every time you click done, so done, and then add a new one, it just adds another layer. So there's another dot. So you can kind of, you can have as many as you want on there. I'm going to add a little drama with some clarity, but I don't want to lose, I don't want this getting all weird on the edge. So there's an easy way to fix that. If let's say you go over it and like, oh no, I got it on this part. You just hold Alt. I don't know what it is in a Mac, guys, sorry. But you see it, you hold Alt and then it's removing. So if you hover over this, you'll see, and I have a little piece left there. Get rid of that. See, that's just affecting that area. This side. So there's a little bit there I don't really want it on. And you just click to switch to the one you want to use. Or adjust, sorry. All right. Now I'm going to bring up the background a little bit just to, it was a little, I'll show you, it was a little out of balance there. So now I kind of balanced it, blended it together so it's kind of like an even light throughout, fading off into a little more darkness. Here's where you can get a little crazy. This is this lights thing, and I showed you that before where you can adjust it that way. But if you click this little guy here, this brings up your point curve, and you can really manipulate a lot of stuff in this. This is where you get, like, I'll show you this fade kind of look. You see it on a lot of things. So it gives it like that kind of fade. That's how you you just bring up this bottom points here. I haven't edited this image yet, so I'm kind of figuring out what I really want to do to it. So I'm just playing right now. And that's, for me, a huge part of everything. I just kind of like trial and error it, really, till I'm happy with what I see. And I'm losing see, as you go up, you lose all the darks, the shadow. So I don't want to do too much, but I'm going to do a little bit. There, all right. That's just like a simple S curve. It's just a standard contrast curve with bumping up the blacks a little bit so they fade a tiny, tiny bit. In here is all your color management. You can do it, look at it a bunch of different ways. I always look at it this way. I don't know, it's just kind of how I learned, so it's what I do. You can manipulate color in here quite a lot, adding saturation, changing tones and things like that. And if you ever like get all whacked out here and you're like, oh, I don't know I have to like slide it back to 0. You just double click on it and it takes it right back to 0. I'm going to throw a little bit more color in there, just a tiny little bit. And the blue channel is where the snow is. Now, snow isn't blue, so it's kind of a fine line on the snow on this stuff. So you can bump up luminance or whatever, or even drop her down. But see, as you start to do it, it really manipulates the image. So subtlety is more of a key. There is something to be said about actually capturing the photo the right way. So you want to know how to use your camera too. Okay. Down at the bottom, you can normally manipulate a lot of the color in here as well. Because I merged it with the HDR program, it doesn't affect it like it would on, I'll show you back on this guy. Yeah, this guy. You can really change the whole shadows or the tone of the whole image. See, it's now like pink and purple, and you can really do many, many, many things with that. I'm just trying to straighten this out a little bit. I know it's probably not naturally straight, but in an image like this, I'll reset this to show you. One of the biggest kind of pet peeves I have is when horizons aren't straight. That's just, to me, like, it's the first thing I notice in a photograph, and what sets them apart, unfortunately, negatively, is when you don't really pay attention to that. So I always try to make sure, even if I'm cheating a bit, to try to put it on level. It just looks better. I'll show you before and after. That, and then, yeah. So, I mean, well, it's not that big of a deal. Well, it is kind of, when you're trying to push your photo to the next level. Just going to work in the sky a little bit here. Try to bring a little more. It's not my typical kind of photo because I'm focused on something on the foreground, and I usually focus on the sky or something like that. So there's a little bit of work involved in trying to figure it out. Warm it up a little bit. Pull out some of that purple a little. Yeah, there we go. And going in, just making sure everything's nice. I got some snow on there, which I guess kind of goes with the photo. Now, here's something that's horrible. I have a very dirty sensor right now. I cleaned it today, actually, but fortunately, Lightroom has this magical thing that removes spots. You just click this spot removal tool and just paint over the spot. Boom, there it goes. Now I see something I don't like. Okay, see this like kind of really sharp. I think that's because when I did that last edit on the sky, this one, I bumped it too high with the clarity. So I want to fix that. Yeah, definitely. Still there a bit, but definitely not as noticeable. So paint out all those little spots because those little spots are not good. Here's another one. I always go over my images like this just to make sure. There's a couple little things here too. Now you can do this in Photoshop as well, and it's actually better with the healing brush tool. But I don't really want to open Photoshop, and so the trade-off for me is just doing it here. Get rid of that little thing. There's like a before. Now remember that I did merge these three together, so it's a little different, but there's an after. And so I'll post that on the old Instagram soon. I know I didn't really point out a ton of things. I just want you to watch kind of what I do and encourage you to play with the sliders. I mean, that's how I kind of learned, watching YouTube videos and just sliding things to see what it did. So it really doesn't take too much, and you can have an actual proper HDR image. And so yeah, anyway, check out my YouTube page, youtube.com/Jesse Martineau. And these are Thursday boots. I'll link them up in the description down below as well. But that's all for this time. Thanks for watching.